In this lecture, I'm going to show you a bit about some of the famous historical impacts. You're going to get more of this when you watch the presentations that your classmates do, but I particularly want to talk about the dinosaur killer meteor because um, that one is obviously extremely important, and nobody's actually covering that one. But I'm going to start with some smaller ones that happened on Earth. The first one is one that happened in Siberia in Russia in 1908, and it's near this place called Tunguska. And this is an actual photograph of what was there. For a long time, people didn't really know what happened here. What they knew was that there had been this large flash of light from the sky, and then when people went to the area where the flash had been seen, they saw scenes that looked like this. This is the middle of nowhere. This is Siberia. It's just a forest. There's nothing there except trees. Well, but the trees were all knocked down like this. They were all knocked down sort of in this sort of outwardly radial direction. You could see them, they were knocked down in this complete circle. And people didn't really understand at that time what caused it, but what we now know is that this was a meteor maybe 50 or 80 meters across, so smaller than a football field, but still pretty big. And it exploded in the atmosphere before it hit the ground. And this explosion, the force wave from the explosion, knocked down all the trees. Fortunately, it was in Siberia, nobody was there. You can imagine what this would be like if it happened over a major city. You know, you see what happens to the trees here. Now imagine that happening to buildings full of people. So even one that is only 60 or 80 meters across can cause some pretty serious damage if you happen to be in the vicinity. A somewhat bigger one is the one that created Meteor Crater in Arizona. This is Meteor Crater. We don't have a lot of craters that are still visible on Earth because there's so much erosion that happens due to our atmosphere, due to rain, due to the ocean, due to rivers, all the various processes that happen on Earth. They tend to erase craters. But this one was pretty big, and it was in the middle of a desert, so it's less eroded than any other craters we might find. And this is a very large crater. This is miles across, a couple of miles across here. You can kind of see the road that leads to it. And this was a meteor that hit intact and caused a gigantic crater. So this would be one that was maybe 100 or 200 meters across, several hundred meters across. And that creates a crater miles across. Again, now imagine this happening in a populated place today. That would not be good. It wouldn't wipe out all life on the planet, but that city would obviously be in pretty serious trouble. For a slightly bigger one, we'll go to one that we actually observed happening on Jupiter. This was the first time that humans had ever actually observed an impact in process. We knew it was going to happen, we knew where it was going to happen, we knew when it was going to happen, and we were able to watch it. This was a comet that hit Jupiter, and the comet was originally about 5 kilometers across. Its head was, of course, the tail would have been much bigger, but the size of the head was about 5 kilometers. And due to some of the effects of Jupiter's gravity, it actually shredded the comet into a bunch of smaller pieces, up to about 2 kilometers across. And each of those pieces hit Jupiter. And so this is just showing some of the pieces. You see these dark spots here on Jupiter. That's where some of the bigger pieces hit. These are sort of zoom-ins on the dark spots. Now, Jupiter is entirely gas. There's no solid surface, so it's not like we're going to get craters or anything. What we have is that the pieces explode in Jupiter's atmosphere, in this case, because Jupiter doesn't have a solid surface for it to hit. And so what you're seeing is the debris cloud from each of the pieces. Well, you're like, okay, no big deal. Well, these dark spots, some of these here, this is like the size of Earth's entire radius. Like if you stuck Earth in front of Jupiter, this would be how big Earth is. These dark spots are the size of Earth. So you get something that's a couple of kilometers across, and you're causing debris that would cover the entire Earth. So if you think about some of the Hollywood scenarios about, what do we do if a meteor's coming? One of the first responses is, well, let's hit it with a nuclear bomb and break it into a bunch of pieces. Well, here's what happens if you break it into a bunch of pieces. You still get these huge things, these huge dust clouds that are even 2 times the entire radius of the Earth. So, not the best solution. And finally, I'm going to talk about the dinosaur killer. This is called Chicxulub. That's how you pronounce this word. And it's named for the place in Mexico where we know that it hit. There is a crater there. This is sort of a Google Earth image. This is a radar image, and you can clearly see there's a crater here. This white line is sort of the edge of the land, and then it goes out into the Gulf of Mexico. This was a meteor about 5 kilometers across, and obviously it's 65 million years ago. They have dated the rocks in the impact area. They know that a meteor caused this, and it happens to correspond perfectly in time to when the dinosaurs died. So that's why they think this is what killed the dinosaurs. Well, why does that kill the dinosaurs? I'm going to go to a computer simulation now that sort of gives you a sense. So this is from Google Earth, and they have simulated in this the regions that would be affected by various things that come out of a giant meteor impact. So here's Mexico, and we can sort of zoom in. There's the crater, that's the Yucatan Peninsula, there's Cozumel, and you can see that's the crater. Okay, well, no big deal. That would be unpleasant if you happened to be there, but why would that kill all the dinosaurs on the planet? Well, it's not just the crater. For instance, let's see where you would get what they call ejecta, which is dirt and debris that's shot up by the impact. Okay, zooming out, zooming out, zooming out, zooming out. All of this would have gotten some amount of just dust and debris from this impact. So pretty much the entire United States was covered with stuff, rock and dirt falling from the sky from this impact. Earthquakes. All of this area would have felt a gigantic earthquake. So that would be pretty devastating. If you think earthquakes, well, and we're right there on the edge of the water, you're probably going to get tsunamis. There's where the tsunami hits. It's the entire hemisphere gets a tsunami. So, you think about the tsunamis that we worry about, like the ones in Japan or Indonesia, that hit one area of Japan, one area of Indonesia. Here we have tsunamis that cover an entire hemisphere. Just feeling an air blast, that's this one. And again, you would feel the air shooting outwards this entire distance, almost a whole hemisphere. And there would be fireballs. All of this area would have experienced a fireball. So where we are in Houston would have experienced a fireball from this impact over here in Mexico. So you can certainly imagine that anything in the Western Hemisphere, that's going to be in trouble. What about in Europe and Africa and Asia? Well, they were a bit better off, but that debris cloud that we showed that covered most of the hemisphere, that's just where the stuff landed. But a lot of it went into the atmosphere. And that dirt and debris in the atmosphere would have blocked out the sun. And so blocking out the sun, of course, is going to make it colder. You're going to kill off the plants. And then eventually the things that eat the plants die. So that's your sort of herbivore dinosaurs, they die. And then the things that eat the herbivores die. So that's your T-Rex and guys like that that eat meat, they die. So it's very, very difficult to survive such a situation. And now imagine this happening today. Think about the billions of people that would die if something like this hit today. This is something that is a planet-wide catastrophe and causes mass extinction, climate change, giant tsunamis and earthquakes, fireballs, all of this kind of stuff. Devastating potential impact effects.